With Iran. This is Connect the World from our Middle East programming headquarters. I'm Becky Anderson for you in Abu Dhabi, where the time is just after 6 in the evening in the UAE. On this 6th day of an expanding Middle East war, Israel is launching an 11th wave of attacks in Iran and also hitting what it says are more Hezbollah targets in Lebanon, including what the IDF describes as a command and control center. Iran firing at Gulf states and beyond. This video shot by our CNN team in Doha, showing Qatari air defenses intercepting an Iranian missile a few hours ago. Azerbaijan, the latest country to find itself in the firing line, saying a suspected Iranian drone attack injured 2 people when at an airport, so was hit near the Iran-Azerbaijan border. Iran's military denies that attack. Inside Iran, the death toll keeps rising. A state-run Iranian agency says more than 1,200 people have been killed since Saturday. The White House now acknowledging it may have been a US attack that hit a girls' elementary school in Iran at the weekend. Tehran says 168 children were killed. Iran's foreign minister today describing the sinking of an Iranian warship by a US submarine as an atrocity. The ship was attacked in international waters Wednesday, having left a port in India. While air travel in the Middle East is still severely curtailed, evacuations of foreign nationals are finally ramping up, and we are seeing scenes like these: repatriated Portuguese nationals arriving home in Lisbon. Well, the first US evacuation flight has left the Middle East. The Trump administration has faced criticism for not having an evacuation plan ready. Our senior international correspondent Fred Pleitkin and his team have crossed the border into Iran. CNN is the first US network allowed into the country since the start of the war. We have to point out CNN does operate in Iran only with government position. Here is Fred's report.
We just crossed the border and are now inside of Iran. The Iranian government has granted us a visa to come here and to report from the Islamic Republic of Iran. We're now trying to make our way to the capital, Tehran, as fast as possible. But of course, the distances in this huge country are immense, and we know it's going to take many, many hours for us to get there. We also don't know what the situation on the road to Tehran is going to look like, how many checkpoints there's going to be, and of course we know at the same time there are massive combat operations also going on. The United States and Israel are continuing their huge aerial campaign against targets inside of Iran. At the same time, the Iranians continue to retaliate, not just with their ballistic missiles, but with their drones, mostly hitting Israel, but then also American military installations, especially in the Gulf region, but in general in the Middle East. In total, the Iranians are saying that they can continue this campaign for a very long time. They say that their missile arsenal is still immense, and they haven't even used some of their most modern missiles. But we also, of course, know that the place that we aim to go to, Tehran, has been under almost sustained attacks with massive airstrikes going on there and also huge damage being caused, and of course many people also having been harmed.
Fred Pleitkin on his way into Iran. Well, that country continues to target Gulf states. Here in Abu Dhabi, officials say 6 people, some Pakistani, others from Nepal, were injured by falling debris after air defences intercepted an incoming drone. I want to get you to London now, where Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, is holding a press conference. Let's listen in. Right, we're having some technical difficulties in getting the audio on Keir Starmer. So let me get to our reporters on the ground in the Gulf here and get you a sense of what's been happening in the past sort of 24 hours here. And we'll get back to Keir Starmer. CNN producer Bijan Hosseini is in Doha. Paul is in Dubai. Let's start with you, Bijan. What's the latest on those missile strikes that we reported on just a couple of hours ago and you witnessed there in Doha?
Yeah, Becky, as you said, we witnessed a very loud and a very long missile attack, and I'm calling it a missile attack because that's how Qatar's Ministry of Defense referred to it after they confirmed that. It was just after midday. We've been live for 6 days from this location. That was by far the loudest and the longest attack that we've witnessed personally. You know, this comes after the Ministry of Interior started evacuating people near the U.S. Embassy last night. One of our CNN staff members caught up in that evacuation at 3 a.m. getting a knock from police to leave his house. He was able to return 2 hours later after they said the threat was neutralized and he was outside of that security parameter. No witnesses experienced any interceptions last night, but obviously a different story today. This also comes after Iran's foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, called Qatari's foreign minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs, Qatari's prime minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs. Araghchi on the phone call yesterday reiterating some of these Iranian statements we've seen for the last couple of days, saying this isn't an attack on our Gulf neighbors, we're merely attacking U.S. assets and U.S. facilities, to which Qatar's prime minister said, well, that's categorically false. He cited incidents of Iran trying to hit commercial and residential units, including Doha's airport, and it comes at a time these last 6 days really threatening that delicate relationship between Qatar and Iran. We know they don't have an amazing relationship, but they've always had a pragmatic one. They share the world's largest natural gas field. They conduct in trade. Qatar has even mediated on behalf of Iran with Western countries in the past, but obviously the last 6 days, and especially what we experienced earlier today, threatening that relationship.
Bijan, thank you. And I think I'm being told we can get to the Keir Starmer press conference now. I know that he's making a statement. So let's get to London. This started moments ago. Let's listen in.
It was deliberate. It was in the national interest. And I stand by it. But when Iran started attacking countries around the Gulf and the wider region, the situation changed. Iran has now fired drones and missiles at 10 countries that did not attack them. These are allies of the UK, where we have hundreds of thousands of British people, as well as British military personnel. Our number one priority is protecting our people. And that's why, long before the US and Israeli action last weekend, we had already deployed additional military capabilities to the region to defend our interests. And I want to pay tribute to our brilliant armed forces. Throughout January and February, we were moving defensive assets to Cyprus and Qatar. Fighter jets, air defence missiles, advanced radar, and systems to take down drones, to ensure we were in a heightened state of readiness in advance of any conflict beginning. When the strikes began on Saturday, we immediately put those jets into the sky on a mission to protect our people and our allies in the region. And that is what they have done, flying over Cyprus and the wider region, shooting down multiple drones, at least one of which was heading towards a base housing British military personnel. Our jets were in the sky again last night, over Jordan, Qatar, and other partners, refuelling in the air to prolong their mission. And we're constantly resupplying our jets and our missile stores. And we are responding to requests from allies in the region for further help. I can announce today that we're sending 4 additional Typhoon jets to join our squadron in Qatar to strengthen our defensive operations in Qatar and across the region. Wildcat helicopters with anti-drone capabilities are arriving in Cyprus tomorrow. The Defence Secretary is on the ground in Cyprus right now, coordinating our work and meeting our brave servicemen and women. We're deploying HMS Dragon to the Mediterranean. And we have allowed the US to use British bases to conduct defensive operations to take out Iranian missiles before they're fired at our people and our allies. We will maintain this shield over British people in the region and our allies. We are working to strengthen it every day. And we're working as fast as possible to get our people out. As of today, over 140,000 individuals in the region have registered their presence, enabling us to get them the information and the support that they need. We have rapid deployment teams on the ground in Oman and Saudi Arabia. And our consular teams are helping hundreds of the most vulnerable individuals. Despite airspace closures, we're working around the clock with airlines, travel companies and governments to open safe routes home. More than 4,000 people have now arrived back in the United Kingdom on commercial flights from the UAE, including vulnerable Brits identified by our teams. A further 7 flights are due to leave the UAE for the UK today. And I can report that our first charter flight from Oman took off a few minutes ago. We will lay on additional charter flights in the coming days. British Airways is putting on daily flights from Oman, and we will keep working with all of our partners to increase the speed and capacity of this airlift. I want to be very clear. This is a huge undertaking. It's one of the biggest operations of its kind, many times bigger than the evacuation from Afghanistan. It's not going to happen overnight, but we will not stop until our people are safe. I also want to say a word about the economic impact. Iran is targeting oil and gas facilities in the Gulf and tankers in the Straits of Hormuz, trying to inflict economic pain around the world. So we will continue to work with the industries affected and our allies to respond to any impact. This is where the long-term changes that we're delivering for the British people are paying off. We have the right plan for defence, delivering the biggest increase in defence spending since the Cold War, to strengthen our armed forces and keep people safe. We have the right plan for our economy. As the Chancellor said on Tuesday, we're sticking to that plan so we can cut energy bills and help keeping families with the cost of living and helping them. We also have the right plan for our energy supplies, building up clean British energy like never before, decreasing our dependence on volatile international markets, and creating the energy security and independence that we need. Faced with this new geopolitical crisis, the sad fact is that some will try to use it to divide us. That's why the government is reaching out to communities across the United Kingdom, Jewish and Muslim alike, making sure that communities and places of worship have appropriate protective security in place. But look, as a nation, we should come together in this moment. Those citizens that are stuck in the region, scared and in need of help, come from all backgrounds. The armed forces who protect them come from all backgrounds too. We are united by our common humanity and our love of this country. This conflict could continue for some time. So I want you to know that your government is resolute in our response, at home and abroad. We will do everything we can to protect British lives, uphold British values, and safeguard the national interest. Thank you. And now I'll take some questions. And I've got Chris, BBC first, please.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Chris Mason at BBC News. Can you address directly those at home and abroad who see your response and see indecision, prevarication and a lack of preparedness? Thank you.
Yes, let me address that, because as I said a moment ago, we started pre-deploying to the region in January and February, particularly to Cyprus and Qatar, and that was fighter jets, air defence missiles, advanced radar and anti-drone systems. Now, we did that during the course of 8 or so weeks. We did that in conjunction with the US and with our allies, and we continue to bolster the capability that we have there to keep our people safe. So there's been a lot of pre-planning gone into this, a lot of pre-deployment that's gone into this, and I'm satisfied that we can keep our people safe, and we're working very hard to make sure that wherever people have registered their presence, we can help them with the information that they need and the support they need, and get them back to the United Kingdom as quickly and as safely as possible. Thank you, Chris. Robert Peston, ITV.
Robert Peston, ITV. Prime Minister, I was very struck by your choice of words. You said that you stand by what you called your initial decision not to join the offensive operations of Israel and America against Iran. Does that mean that decision is subject to review? You're concentrating at the moment on defensive military activity, but could it turn into offensive activity?
Well, as you will understand, we're working with our allies and with the US on this. We've been doing that for some time. The pre-deployment was done in conjunction and in discussion with our allies and with the US. And we have that capacity in the region that we pre-deployed to the region, and we're bolstering that in the way that I've set out today. The US are using the basis to do these strikes into Iran to take out the capability to launch the strikes in the first place. So that is the configuration, that is the understanding and arrangements that we've got in place. Thank you, Robert. Beth, can I come to you?
Oh, thank you. Prime Minister, this escalating war is really frightening people that are watching today. President Trump says it will go on for 4 to 5 weeks. You've just said it will be some time. Do you have any sense of how long it could go on for? Do you agree with President Trump? What's your message to the British people worried about how it's going to affect their lives? Can you give them any reassurance that you'll help them on energy prices? And just secondly, on military operations, there's much unhappiness that military personnel and their families were left unprotected on the Cyprus airbase that was struck at the weekend. What went wrong, and do you apologise to them? Thank you.
Well, Beth, let me set out my number one message, which is that our absolute priority is the safety of our citizens. And that is the focus for all the decisions that I have taken, including the decisions to pre-deploy in the way that I've described, and the decisions we're taking every day in order to deal with the situation on the ground in the region, the consular work to get people safely back home, and also what we're doing within the country, obviously, in relation to the division that can arise in situations like this. In relation to Cyprus, we've obviously had an airbase there for a very long time. There are protective measures in place, have always been in place. It's always been a protected airbase. It's not something new to protect the airbase. We've pre-deployed further assets to Cyprus in January and February for that purpose, and we're bolstering that. So I want to be really clear to everybody in Cyprus that we're taking every measure that is needed to protect them, to protect the airbase, along with the other places in the region. Thank you very much, Beth.
Do you think it will go on?
Oh, I'm sorry. In relation to how long it will go on, I do know people are worried. They are going to be worried about the any escalation. I think they can see what's unfolding on their television screens. That will cause them anxiety, understandably. They will be worried about the impact on their own lives that this could have, and those with family and friends in the region will be extremely worried about their family and friends in the region. I absolutely understand that. We are doing everything we can to de-escalate this. I can't give you a time base for this. I don't think anybody can. My strong view is that we need to de-escalate, and ultimately this will have to be a matter of negotiation when it comes to some of the core issues like nuclear capability. Thank you, Beth. Paul McNamara, Channel 4. Paul.
Afternoon, Prime Minister. Look, there are reports that you walked into a meeting, the National Security Council on Friday, with one opinion and had your mind changed by Ed Miliband and others in your cabinet. So is it true that you wanted on Friday to give Americans a precautionary permission in the event of Iranian reprisals to use British bases for defensive action, but had your mind changed by Ed Miliband and other members of your cabinet?
Let me be really clear about this. No request from the US came in the specific terms that we acceded until Saturday afternoon. Saturday afternoon. Well, just hear me out. And therefore, on Friday there was no concrete decision to be made. The decision had to be made when we had the request. That came in on Saturday during the course of the afternoon. We're already taking measures in relation to our own capability. That came in on Saturday afternoon, late in the afternoon. We then, as you would have expected, went through the details with the US over the next day and ultimately reached a decision on Sunday, which I announced then on Sunday evening about 8 or 9 o'clock in the evening. But actually on Friday, we didn't have a request from the United States, and therefore no decision fell to be made. The decision fell to be made when we had the request. That was Saturday afternoon. We then worked it through. Decision on Sunday, which was a decision of all ministers, unanimous, that we should take the action that I then announced. Thank you very much indeed. Catherine from GB News.
Thank you, Catherine Forster, GB News. Prime Minister, Cyprus, Bahrain, United Arab Emirates and others are being critical of the speed of our response. Have we let our allies and our own people down in the Middle East? We've still got a warship sitting in Portsmouth. And also, you said yesterday how in Munich you said we need to go further and faster on defence spending, but getting to 3%, let alone 3.5%, seems to have been kicked way into the long grass. When is your rhetoric actually going to be matched by the reality of when you're putting money into defence?
Yeah, thank you, Catherine. I know you'll have heard me say a moment ago, we started pre-deploying in January and February our assets to the region to make sure that we had the capability that we needed there. That wasn't an isolated set of decisions. It was done in conjunction with the US, in conjunction with our allies, and we're bolstering that again. And therefore, I can say we're doing everything and have done everything we can at speed to make sure that we are properly protecting our citizens, which was my number one concern. And that's why it's very important that I set out the pre-deployment measures that we took. Can I also say on defence spend, we've obviously already increased our defence spend, with the highest spending now on defence since the Cold War. And I've set out, when I was at NATO summit last year and at Munich this year, that we need to go further and faster, and that's what we'll do. Thank you very much, Catherine. I've got Stephen from The Times. Stephen.
Prime Minister, Donald Trump has suggested that you've ruined the special relationship, that you are no Churchill. On the special relationship, is he right on that? Have you ruined the special relationship?
Look, the special relationship is in operation right now. We're working with the Americans in the deployment from our bases. We are working together in the region. The US and the British working together to protect both the US and the British in joint bases where we're jointly located, and we're sharing intelligence on 24/7 basis in the usual way. That is the special relationship. That is a special relationship in operation. And clearly it's for the President to take decisions that he considers in the national interest, the right decisions for the US. I understand that, I respect that. But equally, it's for me, as the British Prime Minister, to take decisions that I consider to be in the best interest of the United Kingdom. There's nothing controversial about that. The special relationship is operating right here at an important point. Thank you very much, Stephen. Pippa from Guardian.
Yes, Prime Minister. As you said, a lot of people are very concerned about this conflict escalating. Has Donald Trump given you any insight into what his plan is for what comes next after the initial bombing phase? And are you convinced he has a plan? And if I can just push on the defence spending point, because increasing in defence spending to 3% of GDP by 2030 would take up all real terms growth, unless, of course, you're raising money elsewhere to pay for it. Are you going to raise money to pay for it, or are you going to make cuts elsewhere?
Firstly, on the risk of escalation, clearly that is a concern for everybody. It will be a concern for everybody who is watching and across the country, and that's why we've been absolutely clear that we need to de-escalate. In relation to discussions with the Americans, obviously they're happening at all levels. I've had discussions with President Trump, but all of my team are having discussions all the time with the Americans about the operation. In relation to defence spending, we've set out our plans for the increase that we've already put in place. I've made commitments at the NATO summit last year and at the Munich conference, and I was clear then that we will need to go further and faster. Thank you very much, Pippa. And Sophie from the Mirror. Sophie.
So the current situation in the Middle East could potentially lead to the displacement of millions of people in the region. Are you expecting this to play out in more asylum claims, including small boat arrivals from the region? And are you concerned that cuts to the international aid budget could impact the UK's ability to handle situations exactly like this? And if I can also just ask, have you spoken to Donald Trump since his criticism of you?
In relation to the situation that's developed, obviously we don't yet know how long this will last. We don't know what the full impact will be, and therefore we'll have to address those considerations as we get to them. And we will, because we are planning both the immediate day-to-day response, but also looking at the further scenarios into the future. In relation to Donald Trump, I spoke to him on Saturday evening this last weekend. Thank you all very much indeed. Thank you.
All right. The UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer denying that Britain was slow to respond with support to its regional allies after this war in Iran began. He confirmed that Britain has deployed military assets to this region of the Gulf and the wider Middle East in the past couple of months ahead of this war. When strikes began Saturday, he said those assets were activated in Cyprus, over Jordan and Qatar just last night, in fact, he said. And he said that the UK is sending 4 additional Typhoon jets to Qatar to strengthen defences, attack helicopters to Cyprus, where he said the UK Defence Secretary is on the ground, and a warship to the Med. And crucially, he said he stands by his initial decision not to join the US-Israel action on Iran. Could that change? He was asked that question directly. He did not directly answer that question. He does confirm that he has allowed the US to use British bases as defensive positions to take out missiles directed at UK allies. Right, what do we make of the latest that we've heard from the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer? Nick Robertson has been listening in. He joins us now from Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. Nick.
Yeah, Becky, I think one of the big takeaways I took from that was the Prime Minister saying that he couldn't really say how long this war was going to last, that he is in constant communication with allies in the United States. But that's a very clear admission, I think, of where this war stands at the moment, that even a leader of a country who is as close as anyone can be to the international allies' consensus about what is happening, that the United States is leading, doesn't have a sense of how quickly it's going to come to a conclusion. Look, I think very much that was a press conference, clearly aimed for the British people, but it's an object lesson, if you will, for the domestic pressures that the United United States allies like the UK, like France, like Spain, are all under at home. Number one, not wanting to be seen to be joining a war of perceived aggression in the Middle East, led by President Donald Trump or Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, because it's become apparent to the publics in those countries that a relationship with the United States can be hot one day and cold the next. I mean, most British people remember very clearly just a month or so ago President Trump berating their contribution to supporting US forces, whether it was Afghanistan or Iraq or other places. That stuff bites deep, and so too the perception that the UK is not an equal partner in any way in that association, and therefore I think when you hear Prime Minister Keir Starmer say that he'd taken the decision to give support for defensive measures now to the United States and face pressure on that point, that comes through there. And the other thing, of course, the perception that he hadn't done enough in advance, not just to build up military readiness in the region, but to prepare British citizens for potential evacuation. Again, that plays very badly in the polls for any British Prime Minister at any time. Drawing Europe closer to this conflict, not involved yet, but that's the picture that we see emerging. And of course, pressure on the British Prime Minister. He's under huge criticism at home for failing to have a significant enough defence spend, for failing to sort of keep the military in a state of readiness most people would expect it to be in. And then of course he wants to send a frigate, the HMS Dragon, to Cyprus to help in the protection there, but apparently it seems to be stuck in its port in the UK, still facing issues. All of that paints a picture of a Prime Minister and his government and the country, frankly, not in tip-top readiness for a large war.
Yeah, it's good to have you. Thank you very much indeed, Nick. So, the UK providing support for its allies in their self-defence, very specifically here in the Gulf, the UK, France, Italy, very prepared to do that. I want to discuss all of this and more with a guest from one of the regional partners that Keir Starmer was referring to, and that is Qatar. Are working, which will include fighter jets, of course. They're working. They're robust, they're working overtime. Personally, how surprised are you at the intensity of these attacks from Iran? And are you confident the system in Qatar is robust enough to continue these successful interceptions?
Thank you, Becky. So we're quite confident here, just sitting in Qatar. The first day we were able to hear a lot of the interceptions because they were intercepted via some of our on-the-ground
Minister just yesterday in a phone call and roundly rejected the idea from Tehran that these attacks are purely on US assets, making it abundantly clear that that is absolutely not accepted by by Qatar. My colleague Mustafa Salem with a CNN exclusive reporting that Iranian Su-24 bombers were just 2 minutes from the Al Udeid US airbase before Qatari F-15s shot them down. That is a significant escalation, and the first
appetite for bloodshed, for warfare, for attrition were very economic countries, which is why the primary issue for us right now is the economic attrition that is going on. I mean, everyone knows about the LNG, but it's not just the LNG. A lot of people don't know that Qatar is responsible for 30 to 35% of all the helium internationally, which is included in MRI machinery. It's included in semiconductors. We also produce a lot of the urea, the fertilizers, but even more than that, cargo. A lot of cargo is coming out of this region and is managed by Qatar Airways, and then as well by Emirates Airlines, who are both being impacted, around 15% of the international cargo. But if we're just talking LNG, I mean, really, we're talking about over 100 billion.
And as you rightly point out, I mean, Qatar is a massive LNG exporter, about 20% of global LNG, much of it into Europe and Asia, as you point out. So I wonder, two questions. How serious is this for global energy markets? Keir Starmer, just earlier in that press conference, in assuring or reassuring UK citizens that he was across what was going on with these energy markets, that they, that they would watch very carefully what was going on as far as energy prices are concerned. But of course, it was a massive impact in 2022 when the Ukraine war first broke out. So I wonder what you think the impact's going to be on these energy markets. And going forward, how long can Qatar itself sustain this sort of onslaught? What's your sense of how, how long this could go on, and how long you can sustain this yourselves in Qatar?
So just a couple of things to try to cover everything. First of all, earlier you had mentioned, is there any chance of, retaliation and whatnot? Just from simply analyzing what's going on right now, retaliation doesn't seem like it will make any kind of a difference, because what we're seeing is it's impossible to completely remove Iran's ability to apply this economic pressure at the moment. And again, as I mentioned, it is difficult to overstate the kind of impact this is going to have on the international markets. I mean, most countries at the maximum, they have around 90 days of stockpile. The impacts for this are going to last much longer if we're not able to find an off-ramp. And really, just looking at all of our options, it does appear to be that the only possible off-ramp would be for successful negotiations. However, the problem is it's not clear that there's anyone left to negotiate with in Iran. And so that is going to be the primary issue that we are facing as we move forward. If we're not able to negotiate an end to this conflict very soon, it's not clear that we have any other solution to be able to get our gas, our helium, our urea, our cargo moving, and there is no clear or obvious replacement for it in the international community at the moment.
Al-Noud, it's good to have you. Thank you. Very important to get your analysis. From a country which is, frankly, must feel very shocked, as people do here in the UAE, about the
centuries come, they be remembered as a landmark event because it is opening a completely new era of motorsport search.
US markets opened about 13 minutes ago. Let's see how they are doing today. Not a significant decrease, but a decrease nonetheless. These markets did not follow what happened in the Asian market today, where in its fourth day of trading, Asia actually traded significantly higher today. But then there has been some, picking up of cheaper stock after significant declines over the past three trading sessions. Thursday, of course, has been continuing on. Kentucky's Rand Paul voting with Democrats to rein in the president's war power Hours. It's very late from our senior White House reporter, Kevin Liptak. Kevin, Speaker Mike Johnson has this to say ahead of today's House vote. Have a listen.
I think the passage of a war party resolution right now would be a terrible, dangerous idea. It would power our enemies. It would kneecap our own forces. It would take the ability of the U.S. military and the Commander-in-Chief away from completing this critical mission to keep everybody safe.
Well, that is his position. What are we expecting to happen in the House today? Kevin?
Yeah, there's no expectation that this is going to pass. The House just has failed in the Senate, and it has led to this somewhat confusing semantic debate in Washington about what the president is worried about in Iran is actually a war. You had Mike Johnson yesterday saying that it was not, and of course, if he calls it a war, that would mean that Congress had to authorize it. But in the same breath, President Trump called it a war twice in an event that he held at the White House yesterday. And so you do see at least the Republicans that are close to the president and that are in leadership in the House kind of tying themselves into knots to try and insist that what is happening in the Middle East right now is not in fact a war, in order to sort of shirk their own responsibility for authorizing it and for declaring it to be what it is. The Constitution says that Congress has the authority to declare war, but it hasn't actually been declared as such for many years. I think for all of this debate that's happening in Washington, there are very few Republicans or Democrats who want to go on the record supporting this or not supporting it because they don't actually know where it's headed. History has shown that these war votes, particularly the Iraq war vote, has become very politically precarious for the people who come out and support it. And so you do see this effort, I think, around Republicans to both support the president, to also sort of shrug off what is, according to the Constitution, their very responsibility.
Just one thing past you. The UAE businessman Khalaf al-Khattur wrote an open letter today to President Trump saying, and I quote the following: "Before the ink is dry on the Board of Peace initiative that you announced in the name PP and stability, we in the region find ourselves facing a military escalation that endangers the entire region. So where did those initiatives go?" he asks. And look, he's not an official spokesperson. The guy who's made billions out of hospitality, leisure, real estate here, and is, he's very influential. He's not an official spokesman, though, in any way. How is the White House responding to criticism like that from people in this region, like Khalid al-Khattur, that the administration has frankly dragged the region where I am, the Gulf, into this war?
Yeah, I think that their response is twofold. One, they're trying to insist, despite all of the fallout from this war, effect of the U.S. had no plan for evacuating Americans out of the Middle East, out of these very wealthy Gulf state nations, suggesting that they had no idea that this is what would happen if the U.S. went to war with Iran. I think that is questionable. Ahead of this, you had many Gulf countries, the leaders of many Gulf countries, lobbying the U.S. against lobbying this attack, questioning whether it would degrade the entire security of the region on which they have built their entire nations that they have, sold to the world as sort of oases of security, but certainly American intelligence as well. And from the General Dan Keane, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who warned the president about what the fallout of this conflict might be. And so, the administration has been scrambling over the last several days to sort of what the point of this war was, but as this underscores a lot of
No one wants to fight for Israel! His hand!
His hand! Oh! His hand! His hand!
Well, Capitol Police say the protester and several officers were injured during that chaotic scene. Brian McGuinness is a Green Party Senate candidate whose campaign website identifies him as a Marine Corps veteran. He now faces several counts of assaulting a police officer and resisting arrest. Well, you're watching Connect the World with me, Becky Anderson, from our Middle East. We'll be back right after this.
Weekdays on CNN.
Tonight on 316.
The stories that matter.
This whole area just engulfed in flames.
From a trusted voice.
We witnessed something nobody alive has ever seen before. You said that AI could wipe out half of all entry-level jobs. How soon might that happen?
A fearless eyewitness.
We just got a red alert to go down to a bomb shelter.
Every night makes sense of the world.
How do you make the case that USAID's previous mission was in the United States' national interest?
Anderson Cooper 360. Weekdays on CNN.
Greenland actually issued a pamphlet, instructions for people what to do in a time of crisis. But President Trump now says that the
are now beginning to leave as airlines add flights and governments organise charter evacuations. Those countries include the UK, India, Japan, Spain and others, increasing flights and safe border crossings from the region. Ramping up repatriation flights amid widening chaos, of course, in the Middle East. Some are finally returning home to emotional reunions.
The main fear is not seeing the family again. And we're in a country where there's an imminent danger of war between these countries. But honestly, credit where it's due to the surrounding countries. They are prepared for this kind of situation. And unfortunately, we got caught up in this process.
We just hope that the rest of the people can also come soon and that there's peace. We need peace. It has been rough, but we are here now.
Well, the first US evacuation flight left the Middle East on Wednesday, 5 days into the US-Israel war in Iran. That is after the Trump administration faced significant backlash for not having an evacuation plan ready. The US State Department says additional flights will now be surged through the region. My colleague Paula Hancock spoke with a couple in Dubai navigating the travel chaos. are facing leaving their home and jobs to get away from this spillover.
Watching the news. Find out about a conflict they're in the middle of. Kathy from Michigan moved to Dubai just 2 weeks ago to join her husband. Now her government has told her to leave.
How did you feel when you saw that directive that you should depart now from the Middle East?
I felt, well, I better get looking on flights, but I knew that the airport was closed, so I thought, how am I meant to depart?
Yes, and there would be
lottery to find out if they are assigned to one of the very few flights actually taking off. Many are in a cycle of booking, hoping them being cancelled. There are some in Dubai, though, who appear to be taking the turmoil in stride, sunning by the pool in between alerts and interceptions. Paula Hancock, CNN, Dubai.
I have to say, here in Abu Dhabi, life does go on. It is difficult, and for those who want to get out, it is very frustrating at times. But I can assure you that life does continue here. My team is in, and we are through the first hour of Cover the World. We will be back at the top of the hour with more.
We have developed our unique ceramic technologies can contribute to future energy, environment protection, and industrial development. Help enrich life.
Every time I come to Spain, I remember the whole past business, but I'm never sure what to order. I understand the concept of tapas, but what's classic? What's a light snack? And does it matter? Classic tapas, croquetas, papas para brava, potatoes, peppers, tortilla, Spanish omelette. Yes, that's classic. Okay, peasants, technically 6 tapas. This is what you hear all the time. I know you don't normally do it like this, but I'm doing it the classic way. All right. The lady. As long as you keep what you have in front of you, no one will say anything. Very good. No, fine.
Discover the legend of the rising sun from the vibrant streets of Tokyo. The enchanting landscapes. Come
What leverage, if any, does Prime Minister Netanyahu have at this point?
One world. With Zain Asher and Biana Golodriga. Weekdays on CNN.
Every day we take a step back to look at the big picture. From decisions made in Washington to the ripple effects across Asia, Europe, and beyond. We follow the story as it unfolds and hear every voice to make sure the information is clear, fair, and relevant to you. In a world packed with noise, facts matter. That's what we do here. This is The Brief.
Did the re-election of Donald Trump play any role in your decision to resign?
Why do you need to study it? It's not like you have the fact on your finger.
You continue to fight for your name to be cleared. Why?
In Azerbaijan, say Iranian drones hit a school. You can see the damage here. An airport near the border between the two countries also hit. 2 people are reported injured. Iran denies being behind the attacks. Well, as the war spreads on what is the end of day 6 here in region, Britain's Prime Minister says the UK's defensive presence in the Gulf region is being felt as British forces are activated to help support allies.
I can announce today that we're sending 4 additional Typhoon jets to join our squadron in Qatar to strengthen our defensive operations in Qatar and across the region.
A state-run Iranian agency reports more than 1,200 and with very limited communications inside the country to assess the extent of the impact of these strikes. Israel striking again inside Lebanon, where 77 deaths have been reported. This video said to show a strike on what the IDF calls a Hezbollah command and control center. Well, CNN's senior international correspondent Fred Pleitkin and his team have now crossed the border into Iran. CNN is the first US network allowed into the country since the start of this war. And we must point out that CNN operates in Iran only with government permission. Here's Fred's report.
We just crossed the border and are now inside of Iran. The Iranian government has granted us a visa to come here and to report from the Islamic Republic of Iran. We're now trying to make our way to the capital, Tehran, as fast as possible. But of course, the distances in this huge country are immense, and we know it's going to take many, many hours for us to get there. We also don't know what the situation on the road to Tehran is going to look like, how many checkpoints there's going to be. And of course, we know at the same time there are massive combat operations also going on. The United States and Israel are continuing their huge aerial campaign against targets inside of Iran. At the same time, the Iranians continue to retaliate, not just with their ballistic missiles, but with their drones, mostly hitting Israel, but then also American military installations, especially in the Gulf region, but in general in the Middle East. In total, the Iranians are saying that they can continue this campaign for a very long time. They say that their missile arsenal is still immense, and they haven't even used some of their most modern missiles. But we also, of course, know that the place that we aim to go to, Tehran, has been under almost sustained attacks with massive airstrikes going on there and also huge damage being caused, and of course, many people also having been harmed.
Well, that's Fred reporting there, and he filed that report on the road, of course, on his way through Iran. Our international diplomatic editor, Nick Robertson, is back with us this hour from Riyadh. And before I talk about what's going on in this region, I just do want to mark off that that's a long journey for Fred. And clearly, as he was rightly pointing out, given what we heard from the Pentagon yesterday about the US-Israel military objectives, that could be a very dangerous trip in for him, Nick.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm reminded of times where CNN has gone into, let's say, Iraq during the first Gulf War in 1991, where there was an active bombing campaign underway by US forces. Back in the day then, when I made that to journalists, we've seen how many journalists were killed in the conflict in Gaza. It's not clear that they get the attitude or understanding of the importance of what they're trying to achieve, bring a clear picture to the world in a very complicated and chaotic situation. So yes, I think for Fred Pleitgen and team, this is a fraught journey, one that has many
Iran would call these retaliation. I can tell you around this region, the term retaliation is not being used. These are aggressive, illegal actions as far as this Gulf region is concerned. Here in Abu Dhabi, we saw 6 new injuries today from debris of Iranian attacks. The total incoming here, 196 ballistic missiles, over 1,000 drones. Talk to us about what you've seen in Riyadh and how it fits into this broader picture, including the several European countries now coming to the region's defence.
Yeah, so early this morning, 3 cruise missiles were intercepted flying towards, it appears towards a Saudi airbase just outside of the capital. They were intercepted successfully. A couple of hours later, 3 drones. A bit later, another drone intercepted in the north of Saudi Arabia. Earlier this afternoon, and I think this is what you're referring to, we were driving out to the main airport in Riyadh because we wanted to go and see if people were, in the country. Saudi's remains open. There are some people who have been transiting from Gulf countries to come here. Just on the way to the airport, there was an or a strike anywhere around Riyadh. So there's nothing to substantiate, it seems, the reports, the unconfirmed reports of explosions, etc., or to connect the smoke we saw rising with anything more than potentially just a fire on the ground and smoke rising. But I think it does speak to the sensitivities here at the moment, that caution is taken when there are reports of possible threats, because some of those warnings have been credible and real. We saw that at the US Embassy a couple of nights ago. There was a warning and then there were impacts there. So I think people here, when they hear about those warnings, they take them seriously, and diplomats and other people in other locations that are potential targets will undoubtedly shelter in place, Becky.
Yes, while you've been talking, I have heard, we got the alerts here. We're in a decent confined space here, so that we will carry on away from windows. We had about 10 explosions while you just reporting this. Folks, if we do move, if we get an alert with military aircraft by Qatar. Well, let's get across to CNN's chief international correspondent, Nick Paton-Walsh, live in Tel Aviv now. And Israel ramping up its strikes on Iran while ordering entire neighborhoods in southern Beirut to evacuate for the first time in this conflict. Get us up to speed on what you've got, Nick.
Yeah, I have to say it's a startling morning of developments here. Let's start with Beirut, the southern suburb of Dahia, a map released by the Israel Defense Force, basically showing that much of that southern area needs to be immediately evacuated, even showing the roads that Lebanese should use. That is hundreds of thousands of people who have to suddenly pick up everything that they have and get out, not knowing if indeed they can return. And that anxiety, remember, not everybody living there is associated with the Lebanese militant group Hezbollah, who are in Israel's crosshairs at the moment. Adding to that anxiety, Israel's finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, yes, a hardliner, certainly somebody with influence within the security cabinet here, but not a decision maker. He has said they may seek to turn Dahia into the rubble, the devastation of Khan Yunis in Gaza. It's obviously adding to the fear here about the scope of what we may be about to see inside of Beirut. At the same time, yesterday we saw an evacuation order for a significant northern Lebanon as well. So that operation moving ahead with startling, I would say, aggression speed. And we've heard the Defense Minister Israel Katz say the goal is to disarm Hezbollah. That is a huge goal indeed, even if the organisation is significantly weakened at this point. Here, we've heard over the skies of Tel Aviv, around Israel, interceptions. Salvos throughout the day. Most seem to have come from the direction of Iran. And now the Qatari government is saying 14 missiles have been launched towards Doha, all bar one intercepted. That is kind of startling, really, because the thrust, it seems, of Arachi's message yesterday was that they were aiming at US bases, Al Udeid. made in Qatar rather than Qatar itself. And hours later, they followed up with this extraordinary salvo. So questions, I'm sure, mounting in the region as to who is calling the shots here, if diplomacy is suddenly followed by yet more missile salvos, and of course, the question answered, who is in charge in Iran now? Days have passed. There was a succession plan, the supreme leader, widely advertised in place. There is no successor we know of publicly at this point. And instead, a morning in which Azerbaijan, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, where you are, were 6 injured by strikes this morning, continuing explosions that you can hear where you are. Remarkable, I think, how we're seeing the scope of Iranian attacks across the region going back to where we were at the beginning of this conflict that is just barely 5 days old, and showing signs of the of this beginning to spiral.
I'm afraid, as you and I have been speaking, Navy intelligence and national security expert, and asked him from a military perspective how quickly he believes these 3 mission objectives can be achieved. Have a listen.
Well, mission number 1 is going to take a long period of time, because you can't get every individual ballistic missile. You can degrade them down to where perhaps they could only fire off a few. The Iranian Navy, that was a gimme, right? That's what we would say. That was something that was absolutely going to happen. The Iranian Navy is almost a showcase force. I fought the Iranian Navy in 1988, decisive victories. They're just ships. Soldiers and the Basji volunteer militias have a place to go. You cannot overthrow a military force strictly from the air. You cannot have regime change or regime collapse strictly from the air. So their objectives are good for what they want to do militarily, but in the long term, the Iranians have the capacity to make this war go a year or more.
Good analysis there earlier on CNN. It's good to get that out to you. We just want to reiterate again, we have just heard a series of blasts here in Abu Dhabi, possibly intercepts of Iranian drones or missiles as we speak. Ahead on Connect the World, Iran's foreign minister speaks with the president of Iraq's Kurdistan region after CNN reports that the CIA is working to arm Kurdish forces. Details on that are after this.
penetrate those markets very easily. And out of the 7 markets that we are, 5 of them were in the top 4 banks in each of the market. So we have realized that the most we can do is to enable trade, and you will not enable trade if you are not systemic in each market.
Connecting Africa in association with Afreximbank.
In a divided America,
where do I fit?
You tell me, ask your partner. Abby Phillip brings all sides to the table.
Can you name one thing you'd do differently?
Hypocrisy is so rank, folks at home. Classes in session. To talk about the issues. Congresswoman, it is false. The answer is 0. The policies.
What is that program? Can you answer that?
We have some red lines. We can cross our red lines.
What Iran said it is pledging to cooperate with Kurds in an effort to prevent other nations from, quote, regime.
Kurdistan, and that is kind of fueling this speculation that potentially that is intended to pave the way for this ground offensive. But as I mentioned before, Becky, the repercussions and the spill out from this, if it does indeed happen, is really causing a huge amount of alarm here. Also in Baghdad, important for our viewers to remember, Iraqi Kurdistan is part of Iraq, and the Baghdad government has made very clear they cannot afford to be involved in this conflict. They need to maintain neutrality, and that is becoming all the more challenging, a very tough needle to thread, as it were, as there we hear
since Saturday. And the White House now acknowledging it may been a US attack that elementary school in Iran at the weekend. Tehran says 108 elementary school in Iran at the weekend. Tehran says 108 168 children big explosion since we've been on air reporting in the past sort of 15 minutes or so. So that's clearly an ongoing operation. Mohammed Ali Kadivar is an associate professor of Sociology and International Studies at Boston College. He now joins us from Cambridge, Massachusetts. You've written comprehensive analysis of what might happen next, headlined "The Fantasy of Liberation by War." In it, you outline two possible paths for this war. One, regime collapse, or two, regime survival under external assault. Let's just talk about that, the possibilities of increased chaos. The record of foreign-imposed regime change is not ambiguous. It is grim. In many cases, the probability of civil war more than doubles within a decade. Just walk us through, you know, what you're thinking is here and what you expect.
Thank you for having me. So yes, there are two possible scenarios. One is regime collapse. This is what also Israeli and American politicians have announced as their goals. Without troops on the ground, this is an unlikely scenario. But let's say hypothetically it happens. It means the government in Tehran will collapse. But the first thing is that this doesn't mean that all the forces that support for Islamic Republic are going to disappear. There are many Basij units, militias, revolutionary guards. There are many Basij units, militias, revolutionary guards throughout scenario. Emerge out of these episodes of violent upheaval. The other regimes like this are Soviet Union, now it's China, it's Cuba, it's Algeria after the War of Independence. These have been a very resilient regime. This is well discussed within political science literature. These moments of violent upheaval bring these elites together, and this would reinforce it. Also, the Islamic Republic has held a high level of mobilization of its supporters, and right now, especially after death of Khamenei, their base is very energized, is very mobilized, and they are speaking about vengeance.
Can I ask you this? In terms of what the surviving officials of this regime are now saying, they are denying CNN reporting that there have been efforts to reach out to Washington through an intermediary country. Here's what the Deputy Foreign Minister of Iran said. Have a listen.
We haven't heard anything, and we have not conveyed any message to Americans because we are now defending ourselves. We are in a defensive mode, and what we are concentrating on is to protect ourselves, to defend ourselves. So no message is being sent, and we haven't received any message. By America or by anybody else.
Now they have missiles and just warfare. To continue, it's asymmetrical. Iran is receiving a lot more hit and damage than whatever it's doing to its targets, but their calculation is that they can outlast that they communicate with the regime for a ceasefire or for I'm not sure what you were suggesting.
No, elements of the regime on a coup, effectively. A coup.
So a feature of these regimes, this revolutionary regime, is that they are very coup-proof. Like there hasn't been coups in Soviet Union, in China, in Algeria, Cuba, even Iran. This is mainly a speculation. The way these regimes have formed, they have already removed elements that would bring a Kuwait. If anyone wants to do a coup, it's Revolutionary Guards, but Revolutionary Guards are fighting the war right now. So I don't think this is a realistic hypothesis about a coup.
Last question to you. Do you think, what sort of concern do you think those elements that do still exist who are running things in Iran, what sort of concern do you believe they'll have, if any, about the damage to their relations with those in the Gulf that they had relations with? And I'm talking very specifically here about Qatar and, to a lesser degree, Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, I mean, there have been moderate elements within the regime. I think they did not favor this type of retaliation. But right now, as I said, in their understanding, this is an existence. And something we should understand about Islamic Republic is that their political survival, their priority, and it's based on political strategy. It is not based on the economic or international costs it could bring. I think they are willing to pay any costs.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us today. You're watching Connect. Well, with Anderson, next up, outrage as the White House.
It is a busy news day all around the world.
This is One World.
The world's top headlines with some of the world's biggest players.
Stories that captivate from two unique perspectives. Zain Asher and Bianca Golodryga use their extensive experience to cover global news with passion and intellect.
Walk us through what specifically Secretary of State Marco Rubio was talking about. What leverage, if any, does Prime Minister Netanyahu have at this point?
One World with Zain Asher and Bianca Golodryga. Weekdays on CNN.
I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Happiness could lead to living longer. You want to know how? On my podcast, Chasing Life, I'm uncovering the secrets of people around the world who are living happy, healthy, extraordinary lives. Hear how they do it and the science behind why it works. Join me as I reveal their secrets and discover how we can chase life together. Listen to Chasing Life, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Will Ripley in Taipei, Taiwan, and this is CNN.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Welcome back. You're watching Connect the World with me, Becky Anderson. Well, the White House is facing a backlash after posting a video on social media that mixed footage from the video game Call of Duty with clips of American missile strikes in Iran. Now, this video, captioned courtesy of the Red, White and Blue, was criticised by the founder of the Independent Veterans of America as inappropriate and juvenile for appearing to treat war as though it is a video game. Brian Stelter is here with more. Firstly, Brian, what does this video show?
This video is a combination of the game Call of Duty Modern Warfare, one of the most popular games in video game history, combined with actual clips released by the U.S. military of missile strikes inside Iran. This is a montage. It's about a minute long. And, the word viral gets overused, but this video has gone viral on X. If you believe the numbers on Elon Musk's social network X, which I tend to believe are inflated but are directionally right, this video has gained more than 30 million views since it was uploaded. And that's because it has struck a chord with people. It's getting some people to respond with amusement, others with disgust, and many with astonishment. When you look through the replies to this video, you see so many people in the U.S. and beyond saying, I can't believe the White House just made this look like a video game. Because that's really the message. This video is likening the real live war to a video game by combining footage from Call of Duty with these missile strikes. And so you're denunciations from many longtime Trump critics, as well as some inside the video game industry who say that their product, their entertainment product, shouldn't be used or abused in this way.
We've had 1,072 drone attacks here, 8 cruise missile attacks, and 196 ballistic missile attacks here. So I can tell you it's not a video game for those who have designed this. Has the White House responded to the backlash?
The White House seems to be encouraging the backlash. We've seen this in other occasions where the White House likes to troll critics, likes to stoke a controversy, likes to get all the attention. Sometimes the outrage is the point, and I fear this is one of those examples. We heard from the communications director, Stephen Chung, on X last night saying he basically used a video game slogan, W's for wins, to celebrate the fact that this video was getting so much attention. To me, taking this seriously, though, I think it speaks to a challenge the Trump administration faces, whether the administration wants to admit it or not. This is already an unpopular war in the United States. Numerous polls have shown that most Americans are against the U.S. action in Iran. So what will the White House do to try to sell this unpopular war? What kind of videos will it cook up? What kind of propaganda will we see? I think this video involving Call of Duty might be an early example of the White House trying to figure out how to sell an unpopular war. And I really appreciate your point about the human impact minute by minute that's actually happening, through the networks like CNN and through the videos posted by individual influencers and tourists who are stranded and citizens who never thought they'd live in an active war zone. People in the U.S. and around the world are able to actually see the true cost of what is happening. Yes, we still need better access inside Iran. We need more vantage points about what's going on inside Iran. But I find myself, when I wake up every day, as I scroll through my Instagram feed, my TikTok feed, I feel like we're all seeing so many points of view of this conflict. And it makes very clear this is not a game at all.
Yeah, this is very real. Ask the kids here in the UAE. Coming up next, and thank you, Brian, I really appreciate it. As war in Iran expands and the death toll rises, we're going to hear Chief of Staff to the son of the last Shah.
In Puglia, these 4 landmarks of beauty are part of humanity's protected heritage. Discover the magical, timeless beauty. Discover the magical, timeless beauty of these places, and let yourself be won over by their
What were you thinking when I was trying to get the truth out of you? And you were obviously...
Agency says more than 1,200 people have been killed since Saturday. The White House now acknowledging that it may have been a US attack that hit a girls' elementary school in Iran at the weekend. Tehran says 168 kids were killed. Well, Kamran Khan Sarinia is the chief of staff to Reza Pahlavi, whose father, of course, was the last Shah of Iran. Cameron joining us now live from Paris. It's good to have you, sir. A staggering human toll already and very little heard from Reza Pahlavi. So what is his reaction to this war and your team's assessment of what's going on the ground in Iran, sir?
Well, it's very good to be with you, Becky. The Prince has always condemned civilian casualties in any conflict. Indeed, he warned for years that if the Islamic Republic would continue to be appeased by foreign powers, that we would get to a scenario like this in which, unfortunately, innocent lives would be lost on all sides. First and foremost, of course, his heart is with the people of Iran. That's why he's been in this fight for 47 years, because this regime has taken our country hostage, has slaughtered hundreds of thousands of innocent civilians in its secret prisons on the streets, as it did just several weeks ago, when at his call people came to the streets, and Khamenei and Larijani and their regime killed 40,000 innocent people. So this is a fight for liberation the Iranian people are in, and after 47 years of weak
me that somebody from within maybe would be more appropriate. I've said
people take to the streets to chant his name, to chant bureaucracy of the armed forces as possible in the transitional government, those whose hands are soaked with the blood of the Iranian people and who have engaged in mass corruption and looting of Iran's national resources will have to pay their day in court and stand before the Iranian people for their crimes. But the Prince values, first and foremost, the will of the Iranian people. And the president has been exactly right to say that it will be the people of Iran who will decide their future leaders. And I think it's quite clear to all who watch whose name they're chanting.
No, I'm going to be completely clear here for our viewers who may not be sort of completely up to speed on this. He has supporters, of course, but he has no mandate from the Iranian people either inside or outside of the country, and there are many who oppose Reza Pahlavi as well. I think it is important to point that out. There may be many people here who are not imbued in this story, so important to be transparent.
Well, Becky, I'd like to ask who else
CNN is reporting that the CIA... Hold on, sir. By some Iranians. The CIA, CNN reporting that the CIA is arming Kurds to stoke an uprising and potentially support a ground offensive against the regime. Reza Pahlavi has consistently said that he is committed to the territorial integrity of Iran. So what are his thoughts on these latest reports?
Well, first of all, Becky, the White House has denied these reports. There was a lot of rumors yesterday about incursions into Iran. The prince has been absolutely clear, and the people of Iran overwhelmingly back these different languages, religions, and so, of course, no Iranian will accept a violation of its territorial integrity. Indeed, it is the Republic itself that has pushed Iran to the brink of even
being chanted. That his name is being chanted by some, but not all. Of course, in the country. Let me just also ensure that our viewers are completely clear that the White House has denied that Donald Trump has approved these plans. Our team has heard and seen emergency vehicles in the area. More news after this.
Inside